Yeah, if that's the case, I think yeah, it's more secure because at least we know what it is. Yes.
Okay. All right. So welcome everyone to the ARA Construction Infrastructure Forum. So I'm Cam, this is Lydia, and our guest today, Dean. And ARA Construction and Infrastructure Forum is a showcase for speakers. We think that they're industry movers, industry shakers, to present to us a great, well-formed ideas. Okay, within the 20 minutes, but it could be longer. You know, we made some of the Q&A sections. And so all of you enjoy this event. And then this is the bi-weekly event, and every 2 weeks, and then we'll invite the people from the industry to talk, and then as kind of a showcase to let to make sure that we actually and you also get connected with the industry. So we'll pass it to Lydia.
Well, Cam's just stolen my thunder. So welcome everybody, and as Cam said, we'll be doing this over the next few months bi-weekly, and we'll have different guest speakers, exciting guest speakers with exciting topics. And on that, without further ado, I'll introduce today's guest speaker, who is an ex-ARA student, Dean Velenski, National QS Manager at Leighs Construction.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Leah. Yeah, good to be back at ARA. Quite some time since I was here. I got a few short snippets later on, which I'll share with you, and some things haven't changed. So, when Lydia asked me to speak, she said this construction forum is coming up. I said, well, what do you want me to talk about? She said, oh, whatever you want. It's construction. Pick a topic. And so what I'm not sure whether it was put on the notice board, I sort of titled my presentation today sort of Life After ARA. I get to talk to and interview quite a number of students through Leighs and through our graduate program and through our summer intern program. And a number of sort of topics always come up with the students. And I just wanted to sort of have that conversation with you all today. You're not all going to get the opportunity to talk to me outside of this. And I think there's some real key takeaways there. I think it'll give you some things to take away and think about. So as I've been introduced, Dean Velenski, I'm the National QS Manager for Leighs Construction. We're a Tier 1 nationwide construction company with offices in Christchurch and Auckland, and currently undertaking work as far north as Whangarei, Invercargill, and recently secured the rebuild of the Scott base in Antarctica, which is a big project for us coming up over the next 10 years. In my current role, I'm not QSing anymore. I'm not doing that day-to-day stuff, but my role is more of a leadership, governance, ensuring our projects are financially managed in an open and honest and transparent way. But at the end of the day, our company is about making profit. We don't build buildings for practice. We're good enough at it. We do it to make a profit. And what's really important for that is the role of the QS. So a little bit more about my story. I started at ARA, or was Christchurch Polytech back then. We were over at the Sullivan Ave campus. Started studying New Zealand certificate in quantity surveying, and that was in 1997. As with most of you, Keith Power was actually my tutor as well. He's still here today, passing on his knowledge. I still see him around, and it's still great to see that familiar face still here with all his knowledge passing it on to you guys. I was just telling Lydia earlier on, in 1997, we had 5 full-time QSs in our class. That was it. We had a class of about 40. Most were doing architectural drafting, but 5 full-time QSs, and actually 3 of those are actually employees of Leighs Construction at the moment. Soon into my first year, I started doing a cadetship with a small construction company called Kids in Construction. No longer part of the Christchurch landscape, and I had 4 years working in Christchurch initially. After that, I went overseas for 5 years to London, did my OE, did a lot of work over there, and had the opportunity to sort of travel around as well. At the time, QSs actually got paid really well in London, compared to working in a bar or selling shoes. And I often say to people, if you can count to 5, you can get a job as a QS. That's how much work there was at the time. It was quite different over there, though. The environment was a lot harder. It was very confrontational, and that was something I hadn't been exposed to in New Zealand. So that was new to me. I went over there thinking that I was quite experienced after 4 years. Couldn't have been further from the truth. And I thought I knew a lot about construction methodology. But as in most things, when you go around the world, things are done different. They have different technologies there. A lot more brick and block work and wet trades than what we deal with here in New Zealand. Building code was different. And as such, construction was quite different. There was a lot more learning to be done. In 2007, I returned to New Zealand, and I set about finishing my diploma in quantity surveying. That was 11 years later. Not something that I recommend, but for me, I prioritised other things, life experiences, travel, other activities. But at the end of the day, I wanted to come back and I wanted to finish quantity surveying. Graduated in 2007, 11 years later. In 2010, I joined Leighs Construction, and at the time, if you're not too familiar with the Leighs story, we were a small to medium-sized construction company. We had circa 30 staff and maybe turned over $15 million a year. And here we are a decade later, a few hundred earthquakes later, and we've got a staff of 350 and a turnover of circa 200 million. So there's been a lot changed within Leighs during that time. When I joined, I was QS number 2. I think we're up to about 30 now at the moment. And like I say, we're predominantly Christchurch based before, and we've now expanded nationwide. I've been very fortunate at Leighs to have lots of opportunities to progress my career at QS level, the senior QS level on projects, to a QS manager's role, to a contracts manager role on a $200 million hospital rebuild, to a South Island commercial manager's role, and into my current national role. So Leighs has been very good to me, but it doesn't come, you don't get given those opportunities. It's all about hard work that's put in along the way. So I touched on sort of things, how I see things as an employer, and I think that's the message I want to get across to you all today. There's a number of key topics that I talk to people regularly. They ask me what it's like, what do you do? Believe it or not, and you might be in the same boat, very few have an understanding of the difference between a professional quantity surveyor and a contractor's quantity surveyor. What makes a good QS, and where do you think I can get to in the future? All of those topics come up a lot, and I'm just going to touch on each one a little bit more. So, what's it like being a QS? I imagine most of you at the moment haven't got the opportunity to experience that. It is hard work. I see it as very rewarding, but at the same time, it's actually a very stressful career. People fall out over money with their family. You're going to fall out over money with complete strangers. It's something you need to get used to. We are dealing with money. We are dealing with people's livelihoods, and it's important that you're open and honest and transparent in the way you deal with that. But the reality is, people are going to disagree. People are going to disagree about the cost of something, how much they should be paid for something, how much work they have or haven't done, and that's real money. It's real money that you're dealing with. What does QS do? And that's going to depend greatly whether you're in the PQS field or in the contractor's QS field. I'll touch on that a little bit further later, but fundamentally it's managing a project's finances. Call it a construction accountant, call it an expert in the cost of construction. At the end of the day, the money passes through the QS, and who does and doesn't get paid will sit with them a lot of the time. The PQS versus contractors QS debate. When I talk to a lot of students, they don't actually understand what the difference between one or the other is. And in my mind, someone's either one or the other. Very few people go from a PQS background into a contractor's office or vice versa. That person is either wired one way or the other. And I can quite often sort of really good feeling by talking to a person the first time and how they think. I've got a good idea of where I could see them in the future. For those that don't know, a professional quantity surveyor is a consultant, works in a professional office, and he's selling his time. He's selling his opinion and he's selling his knowledge. He's generally involved in the early stages of construction, feasibility and planning stages. And he's what I would call, he sort of knows the rates. He knows what a cubic metre of concrete is going to be in the ground. And the one thing clearly I'm a contractor's QS, not a PQS, but because they're selling their time and they're selling opinions, they haven't got any skin in the game. By skin in the game, I mean financial interest. It's not their money, they're talking about other people's money. So it's easy for them to have opinions and say things without any real consequence to them. Then we've got the contractor's QS. So that could either be with a main contractor or a subcontractor. They're working for people that are actually undertaking the work in constructing buildings. Obviously more involved in the build phase than the early design and feasibility stage. And although they may not know what rates are for that cubic metre of concrete, they'll know how much the concrete costs to buy. They'll know what the wastage is. They'll know the methodology for getting it in the hole. And they'll know the labour cost. But they might not know what that total cubic metre rate is. And that's a real fundamental difference between how a PQS will think and how a contractor's QS will think. A PQS will say, well, it should be $250 a cubic metre. That's what it cost me on the last year. Contractor's QS will say, well, I'm buying concrete for $140 a cube and it's 5% waste, but actually I'm pouring it around, so it's 15% waste. We can't shoot it out of a truck, so we're going to have to go through a pump. All those things start building up the rates, and that's how a contractor's QS is going to think in comparison to professional. I've talked about they're dealing with real money. They're dealing with the guy's name who's on my jersey. That's his money. That's his money that I'm spending on his behalf. So it's not I'm just offering an opinion, and if it doesn't happen to work out, oh well. If it doesn't work out and we don't make money on a job, well, he's knocking on my door wanting to understand why. And I think what really sets the contractors QS out from a PQS is they like to do a little bit of wheeling and dealing. By that I mean we're buying and selling, we're looking for deals, we're wanting to save a bit of money, we're wanting to split something up and get two people to do it so that we can make a little bit of extra margin. At the end of the day, contractors QS is to say to the client, we're going to build it for $10 and spend $9, make $1. Ideally spend $8 and make $2. The less I spend, the more I make. That's the game that contractors QS plays. And then a lot of people ask what makes a good QS, which is a really interesting discussion I've had with a number of people. You know, they've got to have that passion for quantity surveying, that passion for construction. They've got to like making money, and who doesn't like making money? They've got a practical knowledge, building methodology and construction techniques. I've got to understand that process. You're not going to be able to procure building products or building trades if you don't understand how that trade operates. A lot of people see it as sort of an admin function. You know, I'm just putting numbers in boxes and it spits out the answer, and that's what it is. Nothing frustrates me more than seeing people that think quantity surveying is an admin role. It's far from it. There's admin functions. But there's a lot more smarts to it than that. And what I talk to people a lot about is I'm looking for the X factor in people. And the X factor is really hard to describe, but it's about recognizing opportunities in construction, recognizing opportunities in the contract, and ensuring that we're making that $1, that $2 that we're trying to get out of the job. It's ensuring that we're getting our full contractual entitlement. The client's gone to great lengths generally to write a raft of special conditions to amend the general conditions, ideally in his favour. The contractual, that sets out the rules of the game. And if there's entitlement there for the main contractor, then it's important that they put that forward and they're entitled to payment in certain situations. Most instances where contractors fail is where contractors aren't ensuring that they're getting the full contractual entitlement. Lots of things happen on construction projects that aren't in the original set of drawings and specifications. There's lots of changes along the way. And every time there's a change, it's changing the rules slightly. And it's ensuring that we know what our entitlement is and ensuring that we're capturing that and getting value for it. And ultimately, in the day, constructions, it's a high turnover and low margin game. You know, we deal in small percentages. You know, contractors' final profit is small percentages. But so much of what we procure can be reduced by small percentages as well. So high turnover, low percentage. But if I can go down to placemakers and buy a sheet of ply 1% cheaper, and I do that on everything that I buy on that job or procure on that job, then I've made an extra 1% on the company. And we're talking about a turnover of 200 million. All of a sudden, then it's amazing how many people I talk to that want to be a commercial manager at the end of the day. You know, they want to be a QS, but they want to get right to the top. Obviously, there's very few roles right at the top, and not everyone's going to get there. But I hear a lot of people talking about not just when they're starting out, but after they've been a year or two into it, that I've done that job now, I'm ready for the next step. I've been doing it for 23 years. I still learn something new every day. I still learn off the people that are working for me within our business and the ideas that they have. You never ever get to the point where where you tick that box, I've learned it all. There's always new ways to make a buck, I would say. A lot of people think, after they've done one job, they're an expert. I'm a big believer in people earning their stripes and working their way up on the size of projects that they're dealing with. And very much in that you'll learn the most off the hardest jobs, not necessarily the easy job where everything goes well, but a job where you have quite a few challenges along the way, a few disputes to resolve. That's where you learn the most and grow the most in your career. And I also see a lot of people now that only know post-earthquake construction in Christchurch. Pre-earthquake construction was very different. We had a recession probably every half a dozen years. And when I'm talking about a recession, I'm talking about contractors bidding work at negative margins and trying to turn a profit out of it. Thankfully, we've never got back to that in post-earthquake times, but what it shows is there are a number of companies that will be able to survive in that environment, and they need staff that are working for them that can operate in that environment. It's not, I see a lot of just general waste out of the industry at the moment, or leakages, as some people call it. And if you're trying to return a profit on negative margin bids, you can't afford to have things like that. I want to talk a little bit about what the sector or the construction sector is sort of going through at the moment in this sort of post-COVID or current COVID-19 environment, I guess. There has been a lot of upheaval in the industry, and there's been some good and there has been some bad. If I reflect on sort of the negative impacts, a number of projects have been shelved, projects at early design or feasibility stage, and even a number of projects at early build phase have had a halt put on them. There's been a number of job losses. Some companies have had restructures already. Although I highly recommend going out and getting overseas experience, that's going to be pretty tough for you guys in the next few years. And the obvious introduction of working restrictions and protocols that we have on site while we were able to operate at various alert levels. Some good things that I've seen come out of it. The government's been very proactive in their shovel-ready projects, and any government and local council projects have generally been fast-tracked. Leighs as a business we've probably had our most successful new business period in the last couple of months that we've had, with a number of government projects, being progressed a lot faster than what we thought. Although we thought there was going to be tough times for main contractors and subcontractors, largely, there hasn't been that impact on them yet. Everyone's able to sort of survive and get through. And as a QS, one really interesting development from it has been how the New Zealand suite of contracts have responded in this instance. And, largely very positively. Obviously 3910 is not drafted specifically for COVID-19, and there's a number of clauses in there that came up and were relevant. Clients have, on the whole, been relatively mature on how they've looked to deal with that. And as a result, the sector hasn't suffered as much as others have during this time. Not to say there wasn't a lot of debate about entitlement and what clauses meant, and whether government subsidies needed to be passed on to clients, or whether you're entitled to a working day rate or actual costs, and defines actual costs in this situation, and whether people working from home are deemed to be exclusive from a working day rate. Lots of different discussions like that. So that's been a real positive for us. then generally the sector as a whole, I suppose, I think, Christchurch especially, we're coming off the peaks of the Christchurch earthquakes. There's still a number of projects still being built that you'd deem, earthquake rebuilds. And that'll probably continue for a number of years. When we look at the stadium that's coming up as well. But what we're seeing specifically at the moment is a real change from fixed price lump sum bidding to early contractor involvement, a lot more pre-construction, and a lot more design build work, which is somewhere where the industry hasn't really been in a big way over recent years. We've probably come out of this whole risk shift from clients to contractors, which hasn't worked out for a few companies where clearly contracts have been drafted that have shifted far too much risk onto main contractors and have been pricing accordingly. So this is another big shift. I feel like we're going into a period where clients are changing their procurement model. They're now looking for main contractors to add a lot more to projects during the early phase of construction or early phase of design. And we're asking to contribute to methodologies and budgets so that we ensure that when it gets to build phase, projects are a lot more likely to hit. The downside, well, it's good and bad as a main contractor. The good side is that you're involved a lot earlier and you get to set the project up how you'd like, and you're more likely to have a successful project. The downside is we're selling a lot of our key staff at not really consultant rates. We're not getting overhead recovery, we're not making margin. And it's our key management staff that are our margin makers. Other people that can go out and deliver projects, and turnover generates margin. So when you're not generating turnover, you're not generating margin, but you are at least setting that project up to be successful further down the track. So yeah, we are seeing a number of larger projects in the sort of 100 to 200 million. And if I think back over the last 2 years, there hasn't really been one of those in the South Island. Certainly that we've been looking at or involved in. So that's positive. We've picked up a couple of $200 million projects post-earthquake. Unfortunately, both out of town, one in Antarctica and one in Taranaki. So there poses some new challenges for us. And although COVID-19 is going to have an impact on the industry, there are other exciting things still happening for us. There's other exciting things happening out in the industry. It might not just be in your backyard. So we've taken that and we're able to expand our business into regions and pick up opportunities that are further afield. So that's the next challenges for us. We've grown massively over 10 years, and there's been lots of challenges along the way there. We've handled them all really well, in my opinion, and this is the next exciting chapter for Leighs. That was all I really want to talk about today. Hope I've given you a bit of an insight into my personal story and how I've got from sitting where you are to where I am now. And a few things to think about when you are going out into the market and looking for a job and promoting yourself, and looking to get in front of employers and things that they're going to be looking for. Think about that X factor, what's going to make you different to the next person. But what's an X factor for a choice? That's all. Thanks for coming.
Thanks very much, Dean. Very inspiring speech there. If there's anyone with any questions, just feel free, or if you'd rather see Dean afterwards, you could maybe talk one-on-one.
I've got plenty of time.
Okay, yeah. Fine. Okay, guys. Thank you.
Sorry? So Scott Base is the New Zealand research base in Antarctica. So we've done maybe 3 or 4 projects in Antarctica over the years. We were the first privately owned company to ever work down on the ice. And as the base sits at the moment, we've probably rebuilt maybe half of it. They're basically doing away with all that and building a purpose-built facility. That project is just very much an ECI phase. It's a circa $250 million construction over 10 years. And the methodology that we've proposed, that we've won our bid on, is actually constructing that facility here on the wharf in Timaru and welding it to a ship, shipping it over and re-establishing it on the ice down here. So that's going to be quite a challenge. Certainly haven't shipped the building overseas, let alone to Antarctica before. But that's the sort of things that we're working through. If anyone does know any of the sort of the history of Leighs construction, we have made our name by taking on projects that other people thought were impossible or difficult. And working down on the ice was one of the first projects that put Leighs on the map. Won a lot of awards. But in recent times, I guess in addition to that, we built a New Zealand embassy in East Timor a number of years ago. But in recent times, certainly, process focus has been very much focused.
Any other questions?
I see you mentioned there is wastage or leaking in the industry. Could you tell us like one or two examples?
Yeah, sure. Just about everything I could think of, I could give you an example, but leakage could be around, efficiency of trade labour. If you went back 20 years ago and looked at some of the labour constants that people were able to do work for, that would be half of the time frames that you'd be taking in today's terms. And you think about the technology and tools and nail guns and planers and everything else, we should be doing things a lot faster. So the leakage comes from inefficiencies on site, poor quality design, we're not quite sure what we're building, and you get clarification on it, material leakage, you're buying a lot more materials than what you might need and things get thrown out. There's so much waste that comes off construction sites. A lot of our construction isn't very efficient from the materials. So yeah, it's just, and it doesn't take much, If I'm talking about trying to save 1% to make an extra $1 million, if I lost 1%, I'm losing $1 million. You're talking small percentages that multiply into big numbers. So you can apply it to virtually everything. And a lot of that is just people not being as efficient as what they used to be. The earthquake contributed to that a lot. We had small companies. The man in his van, he had 3 guys. He was a plumber. He's a plumber by trade. Next minute, he employs 20 plumbers. Now he's a manager. He's not a plumber anymore. He's a manager. Is he a good manager? Don't know. He's a good plumber. And he's not able to manage his guys, and therefore and that leakage is cost either to him or it's in his price, and therefore the cost is to the client. Either way, you're paying a lot more for something doing it efficiently.
Anyone else? Righto. Thank you very much, Dean. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.